Hello! It is December, my favorite month of the year, a month of nostalgia and looking back, if you choose to do that. This year we're all feeling a little extra reflective because it's also the end of a decade. The end of the decade has me thinking about everything that's happened since 2010. I was in 6th grade in 2010. My entire life has happened in this past decade. I started YouTube in 2010. It's a whole thing. And this video is not for all of that. But going through all of that, and now as a 21-year-old, someone who's been reading every single year of this past decade, I wanted to reflect on some of my favorite books of the last decade. And I decided only to include on this list books that came out and that I read in this decade, because otherwise there would be books like Call Me By Your Name and The Perks of Being a Wallflower and Giovanni's Room on this list. And so I decided not to include those because I wanted just to talk about new releases of the last decade. So that made it a little more challenging because I do go back and read older books quite a bit. I mean, this was the only decade that I really read, classics. I'm proud of this. This was difficult. A top 5. There will be some highly honorable mentions. Do trust. Let's do it. Coming in at number 5, we have Mockingjay. This book came out in 2010. I remember sitting in my middle school classroom, devouring it, waiting for it to come out. Yeah, the book was out before any of the movies were out. It was one of those rare cases where we had the entire trilogy by the time we got any movies. I am a huge fan of Mockingjay. I fluctuate on what my favorite Hunger Games book is, and it's been too long at this point. I've never done a reread. So I feel like I cannot fairly say, but I love Mockingjay. Loved the movies. I was even a fan of Mockingjay Part 1, the movie. 2020 is going to be pretty special because we have a new Hunger Games prequel coming out. That book with the crazy cover and the crazy title. So I'm excited to read that next year. 2010 was Mockingjay. 10 years later, a new Hunger Games book. Number 4 on my list is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. The first John Green book I read actually was The Fault in Our Stars right when it came out in 2012. I jumped right on it, and then I went back to read his other books. What a decade of John Green also. The Fault in Our Stars coming out early on, and then all of the movies, this book as a follow-up. This is my favorite John Green book of all time. It's a book that really impacted my life, and one of those pieces of art that it doesn't change your perspective on things, but it really just makes you feel understood and seen in a way that's so articulate and beautiful, and something that just makes you go about your life in a different way. And I appreciate that about John Green so much, and I forever will. And I really hope the movie gets made. It's with the same producers as The Fault in Our Stars and Paper Towns and Looking for Alaska. It's in really good hands, and I just really hope that it makes it there. If you are a John Green person, or I guess even if you're not and you haven't read Turtles All the Way Down yet, I know it's been a busy 2 years, but please give this one a read. This book was released in the fall of 2017, which it feels like it's that 75% mark of the decade, but it was 2 years ago, so it feels both like a long time ago and very recent. Coming in at number 3 is History's All You Left Me by Adam Silvera. Adam Silvera very quickly became one of my favorite authors ever in this past decade. I read his first book, More Happy Than Not, in 2015 when it came out. History's All You Left Me came out in January of 2017. I was lucky enough to moderate his tour stop in Chicago. This book meant a lot to me for some similar reasons to Turtles All the Way Down, with mental illness, and this book is very queer, so I connected to the protagonist quite a bit. I loved the structure of it. It's told in 2 sort of different styles. It's my favorite Adam Silvera book. He's gone on to write more beautiful books like They Both Die at the End, What If It's Us, Infinity Sun is coming out in January. I have no doubt that a decade from now, Adam Silvera will be back on my favorite books of the decade list. At least once, truly. Will I still be booktubing in a decade? I mean, the next book that I want to mention, coming in at number 2, we've got Yes, Please by Amy Poehler. Wow, there's a nonfiction book on this list. Nonfiction, it's a memoir. Amy Poehler is a brilliant writer, actor, comedian, and now director. If you haven't seen her Netflix film Wine Country, it's definitely worth a watch. This book is full of nuggets of inspiration for artists, and it's also so fun to read. I mean, you're bound to know something about her career, so to read about where she comes from Boston to Chicago to New York to Los Angeles, her story is hella inspiring. She's been through so much and really puts in the hard work. There was a point early on in this decade, like in my life, where I had to make the decision to work very hard at everything I do, and this book was part of that, definitely. This is one of my favorite books, and probably my favorite memoir ever. So, and this one was released in 2014. Okay. Before I tell you my favorite book of the decade, gotta go through some honorable mentions. My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. It pained me not to put this on the list, so I don't even want to hear about it. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. The Lover's Dictionary by David Levithan. Will Grayson by John Green and David Levithan. Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Ellery Syons. And Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky. So many of those actually were just like books I read this year that are still with me, so they've got the advantage, can't lie. My favorite book of the decade, this was a fall 2016 release. It really meant a lot to me, sparked a lot of different ways of thinking, and it's by one of my favorite authors of all time, also who I'm also sure will be represented on the next decade's list. It is Small Great Things by Jodi Picoult. This is the one on the list that probably the least amount of people who watch my videos have read, and I really would like that to change in the next decade, please. I'm really proud of the video I made for this one. Jodi Picoult always tackles really difficult issues. In this one, she takes on racism. It was during the 2016 election, which is a very divisive time. I was a freshman in college. I was learning a lot. I was developing my own political opinions at the time. This book was very formative for me in that way, and I endlessly appreciate all of the lessons that I learned from it. And I'm very proud to say also that a lot of people have read this book because of me. Like, I know that's what we do as booktubers. We like share the love of reading and people read books because of it. But like, I've gotten a lot of people just in real life to read this book, and I'm very proud of that because it's an important one and you should read it. But you should also read more books by authors of color. That's another huge lesson that I got from this book, was that like the themes of this book are not themes that I should have even taken from a white author. If I have to, Jodi Picoult's probably the one to do it. This book also inspired me to be a little more diverse with what I was reading, and that's another goal of mine for the next decade of reading, is to, you know, obviously I've discovered lots and lots and lots of queer books, and I am happy about that, but I am ready to approach the next decade being intersectionally inclusive with my reading, more so than I was before. It's an ongoing journey. Like, it's not something I'm ever gonna master. So those are my top 5 and lots of honorable mentions of the decade. I would love to hear yours. I really do want to hear, so please drop them in the comments. Let me know if you want to discuss. My name is Tiernan. I will see you guys very soon with another video. Thanks for watching. Happy end of the year. Ha, ha, ha. It's the end of 2019. It's about to be 2020. Have a good one.